Welcome to Friends on Air!
On this podcast, our teen hosts discuss real life with real people.
We hope to inspire others by sharing stories of individuals and pairs of friends who have dealt with mental health challenges or just the ups and downs of life, and discussing what brought them healing and inner peace.
In these episodes, we also talk about the role that friendship and connection plays in a person's emotional well-being.
Subscribe to this podcast to be a part of our Friends on Air family.
Friends on Air!
Welcome to the second episode of Season 2.
Yay! Welcome, everyone.
Hello, my name is Rivka Plotkin. I'm 15 years old and a 10th grader at Hillel Academy of Pittsburgh, and I'll be one of your hosts for today.
Hi, I'm Marley McFarland. I'm a 12th grader at Oakland Catholic High School, and I'll also be one of your hosts today.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Allie. I'm the wellness coordinator here at the Friendship Circle. I have a background in psychology and clinical mental health counseling. I will be talking to you from that perspective and chiming in. But ultimately, like all our viewers, I will be listening and learning from our wonderful speaker that we have today. Our podcast topic that we're going to be going over might potentially have some trauma cues for some of our viewers. So we wanted to mention that in the beginning here so that everybody can really be aware and check in on how they're feeling and how they're experiencing this episode. So if you start to notice your individual trauma cues, we would really encourage you to take a minute, if that means stepping away from the video, if that means engaging in some self-care, whatever it looks like for you to best support yourself, we would encourage you to do that.
Awesome. Thanks, Allie. And I'm Ayala. I'm the Teen Member Engagement and Partnerships Coordinator at Friendship Circle, which means I get to hang out with everyone, have a good time, work on our teen mental health initiatives, which is what this podcast is a part of. And I'm really excited to listen and learn from everybody, like Allie said, and I'm especially excited because our guest today is somebody who has been involved with lots of different Friendship Circle activities, is just a participant in our community, and we're really excited to have you here on this format, this platform, because it's not a space that you've entered yet. So I'm excited.
In today's episode, we'll be exploring the power of community healing by hearing from our guest speaker, Maggie Feinstein, the founder of Pittsburgh's 1027 Healing Partnership. We're so excited to have you here.
So, Maggie, if you just want to introduce yourself, just anything you want us to know about you, where you work, what you do, anything.
Great. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. I'm really good to meet you too and to see old friends as well. So I am the director, as you said, of the 1027 Healing Partnership. I work at the JCC in Squirrel Hill, which is also where I'm from in Squirrel Hill. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and I literally grew up in the offices where we are currently located in the JCC approximately 30 years ago, doing ceramics up there, and now getting the opportunity to work at the 1027 Healing Partnership in the same building. So that's fun. And I work there, and also my kids go there all the time, and it's nice to be in such a familiar place.
Awesome. If you could summarize just what you want to talk about today in one sentence, what would you say?
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about the 1027 Healing Partnership, what we do, what kind of organization it is. And I also want to talk a lot about the way in which we see healing and trauma as actually opportunities for engaging all members of our community, and how we can reframe sometimes the ways we think about that.
Great. So right before we get into it, I'm just going to pick a little question, a fun speed question. What was your favorite part of your day today?
Favorite part of the day today? I mean, right now, because I'm kind of excited to be here, but that's kind of a lame answer. So I'm going to say right now, it's fun to be here. It's also fun to be looking out at the street and see people passing by. Like, I like all of this. Besides that, my favorite part of today, we just adopted 2 small dogs. And so getting to walk my thank you.
That is a huge deal.
It is a huge deal. Well, and we're not really small dog people, and it sort of happened. It was a serendipity thing. But there are these two small Lhasa Apsos, and so walking them in the morning, they're really, really cute, and they also are really snuggly. And so starting your day with a little snuggle from these little dogs is great.
I feel like we might need to put some pictures in.
Yeah. I think they should come by Friendship Circle for a little therapy dog day.
Yes, absolutely.
Of course.
The next episode should have therapy dogs.
That's a good idea.
Have you ever seen those BuzzFeed videos where the celebrities just play with puppies? Like that's
what I'm envisioning.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they're really good at that. They like to hold like a baby, and then they go totally limp and let you just hold them like a baby.
That's so
How about you
cute.
guys?
What are your
I love dogs. Dogs.
No, wait, what's your favorite
I was like, what's my opinion on dogs? Doesn't everyone love dogs? My opinion, if you don't love dogs, you have to at least love some other animal. If you don't love animals, I feel like it's behind that. I feel like there's a bit of a backstory to that.
Yeah.
But my favorite part of today, probably, I mean, it's so niche to say this, but like just preparing for like the podcast and like the self-care that I did today. I ran home in between classes to like get ready for the podcast so that I didn't like look like I was fresh out of school. Fun fact, I literally came here right after history class. So that was my little fun part of today.
Aw,
Nice.
Yeah, so today was my last day of school before Thanksgiving break, so that was fun. I'm just like kind of proud of myself for getting through it because it was a hard day.
Yeah.
So,
Good for
Props
you.
to you,
thank
yeah.
you. I was really considering just not going, but I'm proud of myself for doing it. So,
We're proud of you, Marla.
thank you.
How about you? I'm just kidding.
My
everybody.
favorite part of today, actually, I've been waiting for results on my Ancestry.com DNA thing, and it came
Interesting.
today. It was really a lame response. I am 100% Eastern European Jewish.
Okay.
Like 100%, like not even anything unique.
No,
But it was still fun to receive those results.
Yeah.
What was yours?
Allie?
Oh, well, I love hearing everybody else's. So I went to my baby appointment today, and I got to hear the heartbeat again, which is always like super fun for me. So, hearing the baby's heartbeat and like feeling them kick has been really like special.
I think you
So,
win.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Alrighty, let's get into it. You mentioned that you are the director of 1027 Healing Partnership. Can you tell us about its background, what inspired you or motivated you to start it?
Yeah. So the 1027 Healing Partnership is a really unique kind of organization. Something like the Friendship Circle had people who thought about it for a really long time. They came up with this idea, they put the idea together, and they created an organization. 1027 Healing Partnership is unique because it actually started after the shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue on October 27th, 2018. And on October 28th, 2018, a lot of people got together and they said, we need to do something, right? We need to do something. We know that there are going to be a lot of needs. There's going to be a lot of work. There's going to be a lot of things that come up. We don't even know what they are yet, but we need to do something. And so on October 28th, 2018, I was not in this job because the job didn't yet exist. The organization didn't yet exist. And I was just a Squirrel Hill resident who worked over on the north side and was definitely impacted by the fact that I knew people. It was my neighborhood, it was my community, and, just even having a lot of media when I was dropping my kids off at childcare was really, really upsetting and really disturbing. So every bit of my life was disturbed on that day, even though, thank God, I was okay and my family was okay. But I knew that our neighborhood was forever impacted. So while the organization was getting started, I wasn't really part of it, which is interesting. There were a number of people who were, though, over 30 members of our community, lots of the organizations that would be familiar to people, as well as the 3 synagogues who were in the building that day, all got together and they said, we're going to work together on this. We're going to figure it out. We're going to figure out how do we create an organization that will be there for the community, will continue to work on the healing that needs to happen for some time to come. And so I started working there. I was hired as the first director, and that was about 6 months after the shooting.
Oh, wow.
So it took a little while. They had to figure out all these different pieces. And so what motivated me to do that was really that, like I had mentioned about growing up in the JCC and my kids now growing up in the JCC, I was certain that my neighborhood had changed and what I considered to be home would forever have some sort of difference. And I wanted to make sure that that was not something that would disrupt my kids' ability to feel like this was home to them and it was a safe home to them and that they could continue to always know that they could raise their family here and feel like it was safe and it was safe to be Jewish here. And so that was what motivated me to do the work. And it's hard. It's hard because, I don't know how to define those things, right? Like, we don't actually know what will mean that my kids can say in 20 years, oh, wow, my neighborhood, my family, my sense of being Jewish in this neighborhood is all okay. So we're always working towards it without knowing exactly when we're going to arrive there. And we're an organization that was started in a lot of ways in the middle of crisis. And so you can't always sort of start it the way you want to start it. You have to, just get your hands in there and start working. Yes, we had no office yet. We had no computers yet. You just start to reach out and build relationships the best you can. And so it's a really unusual piece of work, but I also am 100% committed to it, largely because of that feeling that this is my neighborhood, my people, my family, and I want to make sure that we're all, able to get our needs met.
Just to clarify, I don't know, you might have mentioned this, but what does 1027 stand for people who might not be from Pittsburgh or the community?
So on October 27th, 2018, there was a shooting that happened at the Tree of Life Synagogue. And we use that word, right? And it's important that it was at the Tree of Life Synagogue because there were 3 congregations who were all present and all were using the space together. And so those congregations were Dor Hadash and New Light in addition to Tree of Life.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned that you're a professional counselor. I'm just wondering, first of all, how does that go into your work? And then second of all, I'm also wondering, is a professional counselor different than a therapist, or is it the same thing?
Really good question. Yeah, so there's a lot of really weird licenses in the mental health world, and since you guys are on the wellness committee, there's a lot of people recognize social workers, and then a social worker can become a licensed clinical social worker, and then they can be a therapist. Not all social workers are therapists, and not all therapists were ever social workers, and so a licensed professional counselor is very similar to social work. Except we never went into the idea of social work that does advocacy. We stay focused in the area of counseling and clinical work. And so that field of work, I was in it for a little over 10 years. And it's a way that you can become a therapist without having to do research, which I never finished a statistics class. Don't tell any of your teachers. It was not my strong suit. And so I was very anxious about going back to grad school to become a psychologist where I would have to do a lot more statistics and a lot more research, and wanted to just focus on the part of relationships and how we build relationships, and then how to also we focus on people being able to get their needs met without it always being necessarily about the diagnosis that comes with it, but a little bit more about what's getting in the way of our ability to function. And so I feel like as a licensed professional counselor, it's an LPC, that I'm able to really focus on the people. And I don't always think as much about the pathology or the thing that, people may say is wrong. I can sort of more focus on what they want to do and how they might want to get it right.
Yeah.
So it's a therapist, but I would say that, different therapists have different skills, and mine's really much more about the relationships.
So with your degree and everything, first of all, who does your organization serve? I know you kind of already touched on this, but if you want to talk about it more, and then also if you want to be more specific about the kind of work that you do.
Yeah. So when I became a therapist, what inspired me to become a licensed professional counselor, I was actually working in an organization, and I thought I wanted to do organizational development and nonprofit leadership. So that's how I ended up in that work. But then when I was there, we were working in a juvenile detention facility where kids were pending different kinds of disposition, and in that work, we had a mentoring program. And so I was really just doing the organization, but I learned, I want to dig in deeper. I want to understand the mentors. I want to understand the mentors in the youth relationship. And I was like, I'm missing something. And so that's when I went back to school to become a therapist. And so that work for me has been a little bit different than where most people picture therapy. Therapy often happens in an office, and you picture a couch or something kind of comfortable. But instead, what I've been doing for most of my professional career as a therapist was working in doctor's offices And so when we go to the doctor, sometimes the doctors have an answer, right? Like we go and they can say, oh, I see your strep throat and here's your antibiotics and you can get better. But a lot of the times it's instead my stomach's been hurting for a long time, or I get these headaches at weird times, or I have a skin rash, and they don't really know why. And when they don't know why, sometimes we start to look at, okay, what's the bigger picture? When does this happen? What's the context it happens? And so the idea that, we're whole people are, as I often said in medicine, our heads are attached to our bodies. And so most of my work in therapy was about how do we bring that all together? How do we look at a whole picture instead of just, trying to be like, okay, there's something wrong or there's something right. And just look at things a little bit more in a gradual sense. So what does that mean for the work I currently do? It's very different than what I was doing in most doctors' offices, except that in doctors' offices, we saw a lot of traumatic loss. When somebody has a big loss in their life, somebody dies and it really is hard, we feel it physically, right? Like the idea that you have a broken heart is actually real. And so I saw a lot of people in the doctor's offices with traumatic loss, and it wasn't what I had expected when I first started that work. But when I started this job, it made sense in some ways because I was used to that. And I was also used to doing supportive counseling in non-traditional environments. Like I didn't really think about it as a comfortable office with a pretty couch and good feng shui. I was used to sort of seeing people wherever they were and seeing the doctors wherever they were. So when I started this work, I was like, okay, I get this. I get the idea that people can become vulnerable and talk openly, and it doesn't have to just be in a more conventional place. And I don't work as a therapist right now in my job, technically, right? Like I don't do any actual therapy. On the other hand, everything's about relationships, and everything in healing is about connecting to people. And we'll talk more about that.
In the, I guess, what would like a day at the 1027 headquarters look like? Or like what kind of programming do you offer the community?
Yeah, and you asked a good question that I forgot to answer. So thank you for reminding me, which was about who are our people, who is our community. And so what is it? I'll start with the who's our community and who are our people, and then what does a day look like? But the way that we often think about who are our people, right? That we, like Ali had talked about a little bit before, that a lot of us were touched by this event. This event was really disruptive and really difficult for a lot of different reasons to a lot of different people. But the way that I often think about it is that if you have an onion and you cut it in half, that who our people are, we start in the middle, and those are the people whose family members were killed or who had to witness such a difficult event. And then, the next layer out are people who are often go to those synagogues and are there usually, but maybe weren't there that day, or the neighbors around by. And then there's people like myself who are a neighbor, don't live directly there, but really care about a lot of people who were impacted. And so if you think about the onion, one of the things about who are our people is that everyone has a place on that onion. There's no one who's off of it. It's not like there's any reason to exclude people, but that we have people that we serve and we do specific programming who are that center of the onion, the direct victims. We want to make sure that we get them what they need in a number of different ways. We want to make sure that we've supported them in their healing process, but we also want to make sure that we've supported them in the way that their private experience of grief became very public that day, and how can we help that? And then, the rest of the community, I think there's a lot of different ways we think about how to offer support. One is just to teach what a trauma is, and that's some of the work I've gotten to do with Friendship Circle and other organizations like Friendship Circle. That before 1027, I think there was more of a communal thought like, oh, trauma happens to other people, right? And so what it opened us up to was like, you know what, actually we're all equipped to handle trauma. It's not a dirty word and it's not something that has to stay out there, but like we can sort of handle it. And that we're best equipped to heal from trauma when we can name it and when we can do it together. And so the less that people feel like they have to feel ashamed or quiet about it, but rather can say, this is what's true for me, the better chance they have of also finding what their healing journey is.
Like destigmatizing it, if that was a word. Not sure if it is, but
totally is a word. And exactly.
Like taking away the stigma from people saying, it was a trauma. It was people being able to say that freely, not like overusing the word and like, just casually around, because that is like a cue for some people.
Yeah.
But definitely like admitting that like not everything you have to be okay with, and some things you need to heal from.
Yeah. And I think trauma cues are so interesting because, like, right, that what just like Ali said, like when we notice it inside of us, it doesn't always mean that that's bad.
Right.
Sometimes it just means we have to pay attention to it, and we have to say like, well, what does this mean right now for me? Does it mean I actually need to like calm my body down? Or does it mean like I didn't realize this bothered me until all of a sudden my heart started racing, and then all of a sudden I realized it bothered me. And I love what you said about the destigmatizing, because it's totally true. And it's what I learned from doing the training tracks with Friendship Circle in this part of this work, is that like none of us know all the answers. None of us know everything there is to know. We are all learning constantly. And when I did a training tracks, one of the programs with Friendship Circle during COVID, because COVID was another time where we realized, gosh, trauma and the trauma of kind of dealing with this is going to hit everybody in different ways. Either it's because of loss or because of isolation or school or all the different ways that we could end up experiencing it. And so in that training track, somebody was like, actually, this is very similar to what we do at Friendship Circle regularly, which is that people are stigmatized and excluded a lot of the time for different things that are either visible or invisible. And that what Friendship Circle does is really try to make it an environment where people can engage regardless of that. And I think that's exactly what we hope trauma looks like in society, that like, I may not have to know why someone experienced something to then say, oh, but I can still be a supporter and I can still be a friend to you. And you can help teach me what are some of the ways to be a good friend to you in those moments. And it's not that the trauma has to define us. It's just that we can acknowledge it alongside the other pieces of us too.
Which I think segues perfectly into the follow-up.
In your opinion, what does community healing look like?
Yeah, it looks like that. It looks like being in relationship. I think so what does individual healing look like, and then what does community healing look like? And so I'll ask all of you, what has been healing to you before when you've had an individual injury, either like emotional or physical?
So actually, it's interesting you bring that up. I hope this is answering your question, but recently I had like a past trauma like come up because someone was insensitive about it. And what I actually turned to Ali for some help, and what she told me was that sometimes when a trauma is brought up to you, your body doesn't know whether it's going through it again or if you're just reliving it, and therefore you can go into fight and flight, which is exactly what happened to me. Mm-hmm. And I had one of my best friends who was with me at the time, and she immediately like hugged me and she first asked me, of course, like, what can I do? What will make you feel better? What will calm you? Because I was shaking. I was like, everything. I was having just a response to what was happening.
Yeah.
And she immediately asked me what she could do as a resource, and she gave me a big hug because that's what I just needed. I needed to like feel that, and I feel like that was something that was very helpful to me personally.
Yeah.
Deal with it. Yeah.
Good for you. And that like it was somebody who was there with you. You weren't alone.
Yeah. I wasn't alone.
And then the physical touch piece for you felt right.
Right. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I just think I think that's that's so great that you had that person with you, because I think that kind of perfectly connects to what you were saying before about like understanding a person's trauma even if you didn't go through it. Like Ali actually just talked the other day about sympathy and empathy, and I think that
Molly, look at you.
All right.
I mean, that just reminded me exactly of that talk, because what your friend was doing was being sympathetic or empathetic.
She was more sympathy. She's never. Yeah. She didn't necessarily go through it, but she is definitely.
I think that empathy is like, even if you didn't go through it, like you can still try and put yourself in that person's shoes and like try to understand. I think that's like everyone deserves a person like that.
Yeah,
for sure. Love her.
Yeah.
Bean, I know you're gonna watch this.
Community, like what would that look like? And ideally, I think that's what you're trying to create.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the idea that as an individual, sometimes I need one thing, and as a community,
for sure,
it's made up of lots of individuals, and like one person might want to hug, and one person might not want to hug.
Right.
And so you end up in a place where like individual healing means that like I need to learn how do I vocalize what's helpful for me. And community healing means that sometimes we actually have to realize what's helpful for me might be actually hurtful for somebody else. Mm-hmm. And so acknowledging that. And I like how your example was so good also, because there was someone who was insensitive and then there was someone who was sensitive, right? And so a lot of the time there's like this ability that we have in a community way. We can't be sensitive to everything that we don't even know exists. Yeah. But we can be aware when we've hit a button, when we've hit a point with somebody that something feels wrong. And so as a community and taking some level of responsibility, it's how do I notice that maybe I didn't get that right with that one person, or maybe I said something that was hurtful to them, or maybe my need to share everything that's on my mind is actually hurting somebody else.
Right.
And in the communal sense, what that means is starting to find ways that we find healing for people that doesn't hurt other people. And so that's a lot of what community healing looks like in my world. And so that I go back to that late onion, because there's so much to being able to say, you know what, we're all in this onion together. That's the empathy piece. And I can offer support and healing to the people who I know are closer to the center of that onion. And what I really also have to be able to do is lean out to get support, because nobody can heal alone. We have to heal together. And so it means that sometimes there's someone that I need to offer support to. And like that day, like your friend who offered you support, hopefully, like, you know, then they could go and lean on somebody else, and they can find somewhere else. And we, you know, sometimes there's this fear of like, well, someone has it off worse, or somebody has it worse. And so I don't deserve to feel how I'm feeling. And the way that community healing happens best is when we actually say, no, I deserve to feel exactly how I feel, and they deserve to feel exactly how they feel. And can I be someone who supports them? And if not, then how do I go get my own help or my own support from wherever I need to get it, without, you know, making my struggle their struggle. And that's like what, to me, community healing, I think it's so important. And I think that we often don't do it well, not because we don't want to, but because you have to actually pay attention to do it well. You can't not be paying attention and expect it just to work out. And so that's like the hardest part of community healing, is there has to be an intentional piece.
Yeah, I'm just like a quick to interject real quick. I remember like when it first broke out, like I was like, you know, I was a young kid. I was 11, almost 12. And I was like, you know, I'm like scared to like walk around. I'm scared that people might find out because the way I dress that I'm Jewish, you know. And then I was like, and then like the other side of me was like, well, you don't deserve to feel scared because it didn't happen to you. It didn't affect you. It didn't affect your family. It didn't affect like people that you knew too well. It just like you knew them, but like you didn't know them that well. It's not gonna like it doesn't. You don't deserve to feel like traumatized by any sense. But then I talked to my therapist about it, and he was like, and it was like one of the things that opened my eyes, and it was like, even though something may not have had a direct like correlation, like it may not have happened exactly to you, it's okay to feel the effects of it, especially if it hit your community, because you are a part of that community. You're a part of the people that it was, that the event that was targeting. Yeah. So that like your feelings about like the trauma are valid, even if like you may not be at the epicenter of it all, you can still have like it's not impossible to have like the trauma affect you in some way.
Such a good point. Totally. Yeah, and I hope people really hear that, because it's one of the things, like when you said, I don't deserve to feel that way. I mean, if we're all honest with ourselves, we've said that to ourselves at some point, and it's like the least helpful thing ever to say to yourself. So like while we all say it to ourselves, it is what contributes to community hurting community, because there's this sense that, well, if I don't deserve to feel this way, then neither does Marley deserve to feel this way. And if Marley doesn't deserve to feel this way, that guy doesn't deserve to feel the way he feels. And like it could go on forever. There's no way to make that end. And the only way to make it end is to make sure we tell ourselves that we deserve to feel whatever feelings we feel, that we can't take away that component. And it doesn't mean that, the one of my sayings in this work often is that there's no gold medal in the Suffer Olympics. We're not trying to figure out who's suffering the worst. We're just trying to be together in that experience. And so we don't have to prove that it's kind of the worst experience of it to allow to know that we deserve to feel some type of way.
Right. So you often work with people who have experienced severe trauma in the community, and especially like as someone who's not a part of the Jewish community, and I obviously sympathize and empathize with the people who are impacted by it so much, but like sometimes I just struggle to like find a way to I guess like help. So I'm just like wondering like if you could share a message on their behalf, or like how whether it be the people outside of the Jewish community or the people within the Jewish community, like how anyone can be supportive.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that there's so many ways to be supportive. There's so many levels to it. If you know someone and you're in relationship with them, you can always reach out to them and give the hug like Rivka talked about earlier with a friend, right? Like but we have to be in relationship with each other to be able to do that. And so if you're not yet in relationship, if you don't know somebody who is sort of on the onion a little bit closer to that center, then what else can we do? And one of them is learning, right? Like, I think there's so much about how do we learn. One, with 1027 specifically, October 27th, who were the victims, right? Who were the 11 people? How do we raise up their memories so that they can continue to be a blessing, which is sometimes like a Jewish concept, but it actually makes sense to a lot of people. Their lives were cut short by somebody's act of hate. We can spread love by making sure that their values and their essence continues. And so whether we knew them or not, we can continue to take some of their legacy and carry it forward. So that's one thing to do, is to learn a little bit about them, to learn about who they were. And there's a lot on the internet. There's a lot of opportunities. There's also a lot of conversations. If it's Pittsburgh, so it's like 1 or 2 degrees of separation. So even if you didn't know anybody, usually you can find someone who did know somebody and say, tell me about them, right? Tell me if they were your coach in baseball, or, your doctor, or your neighbor, or somebody you used to see on the bus. And so there's sort of that piece, which is to make sure that we don't shy away from learning about them. And then the other part is to really spread some of the messages that are needed to combat acts like this, right? And so there's something we can all do in that, which is to really make sure that we are listening to each other more, trying to make sure that we're not alienating people with different opinions so that they feel like they have to shut down completely. And those are, there's lots of different ways to do that. There's ways that we can notice people at school who might feel alienated and lonely, and maybe like they say the thing that nobody else wants to hear. How do we find ways to engage them in something else besides that topic that's not a good topic for them to talk about? How do we keep people from feeling totally lonely and isolated? Because, the truth is that acts like this, you can't find hatred if you're really connected in relationships that are meaningful. We know that. And so the more that we find opportunities to combat in that way as well. So I think that, what I could share on the behalf of the people that I get to work with regularly who are in the center of that circle, that onion, is that there's so many beautiful people who teach me every single day. And so one of the things that sometimes we forget with trauma is like we try to tiptoe around certain things. But the truth is, the more you get to know people who have experienced really difficult things, the more you get to be opened up to the fact that they got to see things, the world, in ways that maybe you've never gotten to see it. And so whether it is people who were impacted by this trauma or other traumas, that what I've learned from the community of people impacted by this trauma is how important it is to ask people questions about their experiences, let them tell their stories, listen to their stories. And so, that when you do that, I find that there's always something really beautiful and meaningful in how people face adversity and then choose to keep going. And there's so many beautiful stories in that. So I know that from the victims of this experience, that they love when people are open to hearing that, and that that's not just true for them, and that there's probably opportunities to do it in all of our lives every day that we maybe before felt uncomfortable doing, but asking questions like, tell me about that person who's no longer here that you miss. Tell me about them, and, a story about them, or something that they would do that would make you laugh. And by doing that, we've helped raise up their memories to be a blessing in everyone's lives.
It reminds me of just a small thing. It reminds me of how my school, we did this little program type thing for 11 days. It was 11 days in between the first Yahrzeit, I believe, or
The secular date.
The secular date and the Hebrew date, because the different calendars. And so each day we focused on a different person, victim that, thank you, English fails me sometimes, a different victim that passed away that day. And we talk, and each day we'd focus on a different victim. And so, for example, one day we'd learn about, the brothers, and we would therefore we do something like learning because they love to learn. Or we learned about, actually it was a teacher that used to work at our school, that her aunt died. And her aunt loved kids and loved just the idea of young children. So we did a little ECC Parsha time with them. And so we got to spend like one of our class periods with the kids. So I saw that as very enlightening, and I got to learn a lot about the people from speakers and whatnot, just like to learn about how they lived and incorporate that into my life now for sure. It's very nice.
Yeah. It's so nice that your school did that.
It is really nice.
Really cool.
And it's hard to do.
Oh, no, you can go.
I was just going to say it's hard to do that sometimes.
Yeah. I think that's like really beautiful and important, because I kind of what you were saying before, I think sometimes whether it be like a traumatic experience or like you said, someone passed away that created a trauma for you, I think that sometimes people can just be like, oh, I'm sorry, and then just move on because they think it's like a touchy topic. But it's like just so important to at least to most people. Yeah, you definitely have to check in with the person, but for a lot of people it's so important to keep on talking about whether it be like the situation or the person, and just like let them talk about it. And I think that's 100%. Exactly what you said, but I think it's just really important and need to be said again.
Well, and I think it's so much the part of it is that nobody wants to feel invisible.
Yeah.
Right.
And so even if it's like that I'm sad, like I at least want to like know that I'm not invisible and like people can see me.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we fear like, oh, it might upset them, but it's really upsetting when nobody asks or nobody seems to care. So, we might not always get it right, but it's good to try.
So in your own life, are there any times that mental health and trauma have had an impact on you, and like what helped you get through those situations?
Yeah. And, my personal way of dealing with trauma was always to put my head down and keep going.
Yeah.
It's not really, and I always thought that was good, right? Like that somehow is a fighter until, of course, then the anxiety comes in because, as I like to say, like, any balloon pushed underwater is going to find its way up eventually. And so
that's a great,
that is a great quote.
Because you can push it underwater and you can keep trying, but it will eventually come up. And so I think, for me, what I have found is that I have to make space for my own way of processing. And I often go to the woods. That's sort of my first place to go. I find trees to be really healing. And now there's like a whole forest bathing.
I was going to say, have you done the tree bathing, forest bathing?
And forest bathing is now a thing. I didn't know that before, but I always found actually touching a tree and being in a forest to be really helpful for me. And breathing real air. Like when I'm in a building, when I'm starting to feel anxious, like being inside, always that air doesn't feel like I can breathe it. So I've learned that I have to be outside and I have to do that, but that doesn't always help as much as one would like. And so at the very least, I can get my breath back. And once I can get my breath back, then I usually have to figure out, am I okay to talk to people? And so being in a helping profession, like I really take it seriously that if I'm not okay to be there, I really shouldn't be there, because I don't want to try to show up for someone and then really fall short. And so there have been times where I have to call off work for the day. And if I'm going to call off work for the day, I say, okay, like I need to figure out how to kind of come back. And so some of the things I'll do is journal. I actually really like journaling. When I'm feeling really bad, I like to journal what I would never say out loud. That's my favorite kind of journaling. And so usually it's a lot of words that shouldn't be said out loud. But I need to get it out because otherwise it's bouncing around in my head and I don't really know who to say it to or how to say it. And so I find that to be really helpful. And then, trying to keep functioning in some ways, right? Like, so making sure I cook or making sure I do something that keeps me moving, but not necessarily trying to pretend in my everyday life, like going to work. So some balance between those things.
I love what you said about the journaling, because recently I've learned, I think it's, and you guys can let me know if you agree, but I feel like the message that's taught your whole life is like, anger is not a good thing, like keep it together. And when you're angry at somebody, like it's not conducive to the relationship and it's not whatever, all these reasons why anger is not a good thing. And then recently I've learned like, you need to be angry sometimes. Like it will just pent up otherwise. So I love that idea. I'm going to take that home. That's my practical take home for today is like putting all that anger in the journal. And maybe even sometimes at the people themselves, but first in the journal.
I say, like, if I can write the really angry thing, then I can tone it down to maybe something that's
that's okay.
a little bit
Write it
better.
down angry. You can express what you need to say, hopefully, in a different way.
Yeah, that's true. As a Friendship Circle staff, I am not promoting screaming or yelling,
but I do think that there's a lot of messages that we've received, especially as girls and women.
Yeah.
There's a lot about where anger is not something that seems socially acceptable. And so we've learned really how to shut it out. But I actually think anger is one of our most productive emotions. Like, I'll tell you, in the therapy work that I've done, when I would see people in doctor's offices, it's really hard. If someone's not talking, you don't know how to help them. But if they're angry, sometimes it's really exhausting, but at least they're talking. At least they're saying something. And I think the same in journaling. Like, I can try to make myself numb, but there's nothing that's going to come out. But if I'm journaling and I'm letting all the feelings out, then at least I'm talking. At least there's something coming out.
Totally.
So I think embracing the anger and allowing anger to be an emotion that we're not as...
Oh, no, I was going to say, Rivka, you're talking about destigmatization. I can't say it right. I got my braces and I'm having trouble saying words. Sometimes anger is representative of what we're going through, like mental health issues too. And I think if we're more accepting of that as a community, overall, we're more accepting of normal things that we might be struggling with, like depression, anxiety, right? Trauma. It's all going to present in like different ways.
Yeah,
absolutely. So we're destigmatizing anger.
Yes.
All right. And as one of our final questions, can you share a favorite song or album or hobby, artwork, quote, book, something that brought you healing or just joy or something that relates to this topic? Anything?
Yes, but you guys also have to share. So
okay.
I'll start
More
because you asked me. And I would say that, an album or a musician, I go back and forth between like 90s hip hop and singer-songwriter female singers. So it really depends on the day. But one of those two is most likely to make me feel better when I need. But mostly it's that I really like to sing loudly when I am feeling my feels. I like to find songs that I can sing. And so either one of those works for that. And sometimes I even do that in the woods.
Nice. Do you have like a go-to album or musician?
Yeah, so somewhere between like Indigo Girls and Brandy Carlisle, with maybe Chris Delmhurst in there too. And Chris Delmhurst is, I think, one of the best singer-songwriters and not that well known.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll have to look this up.
Brandy Carlisle, just her voice is so beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, so how about you? What's your favorite song, album, book, hobby, or artwork or quote?
So I have a couple, and it's going to be a common theme throughout because like last time I also had a couple, but I have new things every time. So I'd say today, once again, I'm wearing a shirt. Actually, this time I'm wearing a shirt, not a sweater, but it says "Stay Smiley." So I find that sometimes when I want like something uplifting, I'll do like definitely self-care. Sometimes I'll do my makeup. Like today, sometimes I'll take a shower. I don't do baths because we haven't figured that out in our house. We don't know how to like plug the thing. But like that is one day I will get there. That's what I keep telling myself. But skincare for sure. That is a must. I have I definitely try to keep up a routine with my skincare. That way it can bring me some like routine because that's how I thrive. I thrive on routine. When it's like not a routine, when I have to break my routine, it always frustrates me. So when I'm feeling a certain way, I try to like make sure that I'm keeping up with a routine. And then I blast Bruno Mars while cleaning my room because that happened last night.
You just gave us a solid list of self-care items.
Yeah.
All right, Marley, how about you?
Okay, so also music for me. Like I was this week I was a little sad. I'm getting better now, but like I realized like in the middle of the week I was like, oh wait, I'm really like not having a good time, and I haven't listened to music in days.
Oh.
And then I listened to music, and I was just like okay, so I listened to a lot of Phoebe Bridgers. Does anyone know?
I feel like I've heard of her too.
But
I've never.
What kind of music?
She probably creates the saddest music you've ever heard. So I just listened to Phoebe Bridgers. I bawled my eyes out. I felt so much better after.
That sounds really.
It sounds therapeutic.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
So I was worried when I said that I was gonna sound concerning. I promise.
No, not at all.
What's her best song for a good cry?
Yeah, what I was gonna say is one of her songs, Graceland too. It's probably one of her more popular songs. And one of my favorite lyrics is, said she knows she lived through it to get to this moment. So it's just like about how no matter what you go through, you're always just gonna make it out.
Yeah.
And like every time I hear that lyric, it's just like so cute, and I love it.
Sounds inspiring.
Yeah. And I think that your hard week is relatable to probably many listeners, and for sure to, I can say me, maybe not this week, but like it happens 100%. So it's not concerning at all. It's the opposite. It's relatable, if anything.
And I do, in terms of TV shows, I almost always like things that help me cry.
Yeah.
Because I feel like sometimes something that helps you cry is...
I feel like I either have shows that make me laugh or make me cry. There's like no in between.
Yeah. I think that's great. Maybe shows shouldn't make you angry. And reclaiming anger, don't bother if it's a TV.
No, I feel like that's the one emotion not associated. Yeah.
All right, how about you guys?
Well, us. Well, first of all, I want to tell you for the shower life, you know what I ordered this week?
What did you order?
They're called like shower bombs, but they're like bath bombs, but for your shower. They're supposed to be like aromatherapy.
Ooh,
that's like I'm doing it. I'm treating.
How does that work?
Like
yes.
Wait, how does that
like
work?
you put it on the bottom of like whatever your floor surface tile, whatever you have, and the shower just hits it, and it's supposed to like slowly dissolve. That's like a bath bomb.
That's cool.
So on that note, because I've been taking showers more lately, and I was like, I still want to enjoy myself.
Yes.
So that was like a little treat. And I've been listening to a lot of like the early like 60s, like early Beatles stuff lately, like really original, like poppy, fun. And it's just been making me kind of be in a good mood on my morning commute to work, when it could be a completely different experience, like very easily. So I've just been listening to like upbeat music on purpose.
Nice.
It's a good one. Something that brings me joy. It's not something that I practice a lot, but I want to be better at practicing, is playing guitar, because it's not at all a like natural talent of mine. But when I get into the groove of it, it's so healing and therapeutic. So this is me taking on another follow-up from today, that I'm going to try to start playing guitar more.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's like a specific singer, but I'll have to share next time. Nothing's coming to mind.
We went through an episode without mentioning Taylor Swift. No, we
I
didn't.
was about. No. All right, on that note, because Ali brought up Taylor Swift, I have to say Lavender Haze is I play that when on my I have like my little, like people have their outro, you know, like the outro, like they put on the music and it's like bye. My thing is I have an intro, so on my way as I walk in the door, I specifically like put on Taylor Swift, put on Lavender Haze, and I walk in the building listening to Lavender Haze. It's my everyday
Lavender
thing.
Haze is definitely like a strut song.
Yes. It's like my little like mysterious girl.
The
like,
strut in or the strut out is the question.
It's the strut in, and the strut out is always
something that wasn't good for my mental health this week. Taylor Swift tickets.
Oh, I was gonna say, I was gonna ask, but then I decided not to. I'm gonna listen to that song on my way home today.
Yes, you need to.
Thanks, Rivka. Yeah. Awesome, guys.
Okay, so thank you, Maggie, for being willing to contribute and share your experiences. In today's episode, we talked about the 1027 Healing Partnership, the work that you do in the community and why it matters to you, how we can come together as a community and support one another. We talked about friendship, we talked about empathy, we talked about so many wonderful things, and we are so grateful to have you with us today. And thank you also to our wonderful team hosts.
To all of our listeners, we hope that you'll continue to grow with us as we share inspirational friendship and mental health stories and resources in our future episodes. If you'd like to hear more stories and episodes like this one, subscribe to the podcast, and also subscribe to our new YouTube channel. That's super important because now we are accessible to all, and we have subtitles and a visual of what's going on in this room, which is super exciting. So go do that. And from all of us here,
signing off from Friends on Air.
Woo!